and welcome to episode 92 of Stitched in Sweden. I'm Maria and you can find me on Ravelry, Instagram, and Patreon as Stitched in Sweden. Today is a beautiful, chilly day up here in northern Sweden. It's snowing and I think it's going to be a nice weekend. We've had some bitter cold days, minus 20 to 25 degrees Celsius, which is definitely single digits if not below 0 in Fahrenheit. So it's been cold but beautiful. So today I thought I would come by and talk to you a little bit about what I've been knitting and share with you some upcoming design projects that I'm working on and just give you a bit of an update. Since the last time I recorded, I have published the Eliza Sweater, which is a brioche sweater for children that is knit in either 2 strands of fingering weight held together like I did, or you can use a DK weight yarn or fingering plus mohair. I used some leftover yarn that I had in my stash, which was really nice to just use it up. So here it is finished, and it looks like the sleeves are really long when I do that, but it is just normal. So here's the Eliza sweater, and this pattern is available now on Ravelry and on Lovecrafts. There's been a couple of modifications since I made this one, which my test knitters did, which is just to improve the back of the neck so it comes up a little bit more, and then also in the pattern I now suggest that the bottom rib is knit with the larger needles as the body is, rather than smaller ones like I did here, because some people found that the bottom was a little bit too constricting. So otherwise, that is that pattern. And since the last time I recorded, I also have published the Little Hearts for Kids pattern, which is the larger sizes of my Little Hearts pattern. Here it is in size 18 months that Eloise is wearing in the pictures. And I knit this in Flora yarns, which is a Swedish dyer. The gray is Umeå and the blue is Night. It's really easy to wear and I find that it's a nice extra layer to have. I really like when baby cardigans are in fingering weight yarn because they're just so small. It's nice to have kind of a lightweight but still really warm layer to have on them. So yeah, that's Little Hearts for Kids. It's available on Ravelry and through Lovecrafts. I'm really happy with how it turned out though. This is a pattern that is based on my original pattern that I designed in 2015. It was the first pattern that I ever published, called Little Hearts, and I first designed that cardigan for my niece when she was born, and it's kind of nice to have now designed a cardigan with that pattern for Eloise now that she turned 1. The original Little Hearts is available on Ravelry and Lovecrafts, and so is Little Hearts for Kids. The original comes in baby sizes, so up to a year, and then the Little Hearts for Kids is sized from 1 year to 10 years. So just a reminder for those of you who are supporting me on Patreon, thank you so much for your support. And for those of you who are not, just so you're aware of some of the perks of supporting me on Patreon. First of all, you get access to a lot of additional content. So far I've been posting pretty much weekly some videos on different techniques that I use, kind of deep dive videos into specific projects or plans for projects. Basically there's different support levels, and there's 3 support levels. There's fingering weight, sport weight, and DK weight. So at the DK weight level, you can download my new pattern designs for free for the first 2 weeks that they're published. And for the other 2 levels, you get a 25% off discount for those patterns as a coupon code. So that is just nice to see patrons downloading those patterns, and I'm looking forward to seeing how they knit up for you and for others who are purchasing them from Ravelry and Love Crafts. So while we're just on knitting and knitting designs, I will just share with you 2 other projects that I've been working on. I just sent out the pattern to my test knitters for the Ginsburg mini sweater, and here it is. This is a pattern designed also for children up to it's for babies and children, so size range from 0 to 6 months up to 10 years. I've written the pattern for up to 10 years, but so far I only have test knitters for up to 6 years, so I will only publish it with those sizes, and then if somebody wants to test knit the larger children's sizes, they could contact me and I would send them the pattern for free, because those sizes won't be or haven't been test knit yet. We'll see, that might change by the time this video is up. So just to give you some little details on this sweater, it's called the Ginsburg mini sweater. I'm also working on an adult version, which is why this one is called the mini. And to me, it's a little bit of a modern take on Ruth Bader Ginsburg's iconic collars that she wore, the Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And I just like this kind of yoke detail that's a bit simple, but yeah, it's a fun way to be able to use some color blocking. And you can see that there's 3 different colors. This yarn here is Drizzle from Hey Sister Yarn Co. The baubles I have are in a blush pink called Antique from Fruval Boy, and this beautiful color at the yoke is called Blush from the Wool Barn. And you can see that the bauble color is also in the collar, and it's just a basic pullover, straight body, 1x1 ribbing, tubular bind off. I think it fits Eloise really nicely. I have some pictures in it of her in it, and I can definitely see myself knitting this one again. It's nice as babies grow. Like for the first year approximately, you can knit a baby sweater out of 1 skein of fingering weight yarn, but then after that you start to need more, but not much more. So for me, this is a really nice way to be able to kind of extend the use of like 1 skein. When you have single skeins, that you can combine 2 single skeins that you have in this color block sweater, and then you only need a mini skein for the baubles and the collar. So it's just a good way to combine some fun colors from your stash and get a cute sweater out of it. So as I said, that has just gone out for test knitting. Now it's the end of February and I've asked the test knitters to see if they can finish it in a month, and the plan will be to, if everything goes well of course, to have that published probably in April. I'm also working on the Ginsburg sweater pattern for adults. I'm currently knitting it in my size, and I have written some of the pattern or graded some of the pattern, but I am finding that it's a bit tricky with some of the larger sizes, which is something that I want to talk to you a little bit about. But first I'll just show you what it looks like in an adult size, my size. And this particular version is knit using the antique color from Fru Valborg as the main body color. It's a nice pink color that's slightly more on the warm side compared to the sweater that I have now. And the yoke is in an undyed yarn, same base from Fru Valborg, and the baubles are from a mini skein, or leftover, not a mini skein, but it's the equivalent weight of a mini skein. I used about 20 grams from Hey Sister Yarn Co. Hyacinth, I think was the color, this yellow that I used also on some lace leggings that I knit for Eloise. So that color is used in the inside of the collar as well, and then for the baubles. And it's looking like the collar is a little bit dark, but that's also just because of how my light is, that it's shining through a bit. When you have the sweater actually on, even with a darker contrast in the collar, you don't really see that from the front side. So I'm really pleased with how this one is turning out. I have a bit more of the sleeve to go. That's the first sleeve. And then of course I have the other sleeve. And I will be looking for test knitters to knit the adult sizes of the Ginsburg sweater. So I wanted to talk a little bit about sizing for that sweater. The size that I'm knitting is a 35-inch bust, and the idea with especially the adult version, is that it should be worn with 0 to 3 inches of positive ease. I would say 0 to 2 inches of positive ease. It's supposed to be quite fitted at the yoke, and then the body, depending on your shape of your body, might be fitted on your body or it might be looser. My waist measurement is smaller than my bust measurement and smaller than my hip measurement. So for me, the middle part of the sweater has quite a bit of positive ease, but at the bust it is around 0 to 1 inch, 2 inches positive ease. It depends on my bust size that day. Anyway, so my goal is to make this pattern with as many sizes as possible, to be as inclusive as possible for the sizing. But I just wanted to share from a designer perspective a little bit about that, because I know that there has been a lot of conversation about size inclusivity in patterns, and I know there's some designers who do it really well, and I just want to open up the conversation to talk about sizing, because I think that it may be so that some people have the idea that grading is an easy thing, that you can just grade the pattern up to any size and that it will work out as long as you just do the math and make it work. but that's not really true. Of course, you can do that to some extent, but you do have still limitations to the math. So just as an example, here you have a sweater. Okay, so let me just start out by saying, I've also heard that there's a general complaint that sometimes sweaters fit smaller sizes better, or that they're clearly designed for smaller sizes. In this case, it is designed for a smaller size because it's designed for my size. I'm really making this sample for me because I'm gonna wear it, and so I'm designing it in my size. That only makes sense for me. So for example, this neck is supposed to be quite a fitted neck, even more so than this one. It should be really right up on your neck, and it's double thickness, so it's nice and cozy, and it should be up there and tight, not tight on your neck, but it should be close to your neck. And that's part of the design of this pattern. Now, one complaint that I've heard is that not specifically related to my pattern, but in general, and also looking on Ravelry and looking on pictures of people knitting sweaters in various size ranges, I notice and I've heard the complaint that oftentimes larger sizes have much wider neck openings and larger neckbands, and that even if you are a larger size, your neck isn't necessarily that much larger than a person who is a smaller size. So then there's kind of a complaint that, you know, the sweater should also be close fitting at the neck for even a larger size and not have a wide neckband just because it's a larger size. I completely understand that, because yes, if you have a sweater that you look at the sample and it's nice close fitting on the sample, but then when you knit it in your size, which may be larger than the sample, suddenly the neckband is really big, that would be really frustrating. So I just want to give you a little bit of perspective from the math side of things, that I'm really not trying to offend anybody here, and I just am trying to say this in a clear way that hopefully just can bring a little bit of understanding from the designer side and from the grading side of things. So please take it with that intention. So if you need to, so let's just have a look at this. So you have a sweater, has the yoke. You need to go from the cast on size here. You cast on a certain number of stitches, and you need to increase to a certain number of stitches by the time that you get to the armholes, right? And you have a certain distance to do that. This distance here from the neckband to the underarm. This is like the yoke depth. And in that yoke depth, you have to increase those stitches to the widest point. Like for my size, I'm doing the increases at a certain rate, and I started out with, let's say, 130 stitches. I don't remember exactly, but it's something close to that. And to me, to get out to my required stitch count, which may be like 350 stitches or something, I know, okay, I need to increase this many stitches per increase round, and that's fine. Now, if I instead want to go from the same size to a much larger size at the widest point, but I still have a similar length of yoke to do that in, that means that I need to increase at a much faster rate. Now, the yoke depth does change for larger sizes, but not as significantly as the number of stitches in circumference. So like the distance that you have to make those increases doesn't increase by as much as the number of stitches that you need to increase by. So that means that you have to fit more increases into a smaller distance. Or you need to fit more increases into only a slightly larger distance. So that means that sometimes you have to increase at a much higher rate. And in order to keep the neck small, but to get to that wide point by the time that you need to separate for the sleeves and for the body, then one of the ways that you can achieve that is to increase really rapidly at the neckband. So you start with a small neckband for like the ribbing, it's smaller, but then you have to increase really rapidly. The tricky thing is that sometimes when you do that, you get kind of like a ruffle effect. So you really want to have them increase, you want to have the increases more spread out so that it's smooth, and so that you don't get this bunched up look. So it's a little bit complicated. And I'm not trying to use that as an excuse to not grade to larger pattern sizes, but when you're doing the math, sometimes it just takes a little bit of extra work to try to make it work out, because if I need to do an increase every other stitch for the first row after the ribbing, fine, I can do that. But the question is that going to be visually appealing? Am I going to actually need to increase more than one stitch every other stitch? And that's not really possible. So I just want to kind of bring that conversation into the bigger conversation too, that even though sometimes it's easy to point fingers at designers and say, oh, they don't have size inclusive patterns and they should grade their patterns to all possible sizes, and I know that other designers do it, so why can't they? Some designers have a bigger budget for grading patterns, getting professional graders, that kind of thing. And some people are doing it themselves on Excel and trying to do their best. So that's all I really want to say about that. I'm really trying to get this pattern to be available in larger sizes and small sizes, so that as many people as who wants to can enjoy the pattern. Now, that being said, I also want to just say I haven't put out a request for test knitters for that pattern yet, but when I do, if I have sizes which are not tested, like if I don't get testers for those sizes, then I don't feel comfortable publishing them. So it would be a similar thing as for the 2 larger sizes of the children's pattern, that I would make a note probably on my Ravelry page and say, I have written the pattern for these sizes, but they're not tested yet, so if you would like to knit them, you can kind of do it at your own risk, or just with the knowledge that they haven't been tested, and of course you can have the pattern for free then. So that was kind of longer than I anticipated talking about that, but yeah, just to give you a little bit of the backside story on grading patterns and my thoughts on it. That being said, if I do have test knitters who are interested in knitting all sizes, then that's great, and I'm so happy for all test knitters who help me out with that very critical part of the designing process. So thank you. I think I'm just going to share one other project that I'm working on today, and that is another knitting pattern that I've been working on but has been put a little bit on hold while the Ginsburg is being knit. And this is a pattern that I'm working on in Durerum Natura Ulysse, I think it's called, in one of the newer colors, which is in French, and the English word is birch. So it is a turtleneck sweater. It has a yoke, not a yoke, it has a raglan construction, and it has a little bit of an eyelet detail on the body that I'm not going to show you right now. But yeah, this is just something else that I've been working on. I really like knitting in this yarn. It is a natural yarn that's woolen spun, so it has a lot of air in it, and that makes for a very warm, lightweight garment. So that's that one. I'm not sure if you saw, I had posted a question asking if anyone knew how to get button stains or stains from, I think it was from the wood, like the stain on wooden buttons, like an oil stain kind of, out of wool. And I got some recommendations for Bile Soap, which is a little bit gross if I'm honest, but I got some and it didn't work so well for the stains, but it's actually a really good stain remover in general for other food stains and stuff. And it is from bile, from I think a cow or ox, and it makes sense because, you know, your gallbladder, which has bile is used to break down, I think, fat, so it makes sense that it would be a good stain remover, especially for grease stains. So I have this little sweater that my mom sent to me this Christmas for Eloise, and this is a sweater that both my sister and I wore as kids, and it had some button stains, or it had some darker staining on it from old wooden buttons that were on it. You can see a little bit of staining on the back. But I just replaced the buttons and I think that it looks really good anyway. So I'm not too worried about it, and I think Eloise will wear it pretty soon. It's a little bit on the big side still, so it will be fun to have her wear this sweater that my sister and I wore. We're not sure exactly who knit it. I've sent pictures to both my aunt and my grandma, who are the potential people who could have knit it in our family, and they didn't recognize it in particular, but yeah, a fun little family sweater. Now that Eloise is back, I can show you one thing that I sewed for her, which is something that she's been getting a lot of use out of. This is the zipper, what is it called? Zip overall maybe? I'll check the name for you, but this is a pattern from Brindle and Twig, and it is a one-piece zip-up suit with a hood. And here it is. I made it in a really inexpensive polyester fleece fabric from Stuff and Steel, and I sewed it up on my overlocker. It was really pretty quick to make. There's a couple of things that I would change next time. For example, I only had this zipper because I had planned on making this. I think that this was what I was planning on using this zipper for. I don't know. Anyway, the zipper that I had was a little bit too short, and also it's a zipper that opens at the bottom, and of course for this pattern you don't want one that opens at the bottom because it should stop here. So it's a little bit annoying because sometimes it opens and you have to kind of wiggle it back in. But I ended up having to make this panel here to block the zipper a little bit longer than in the pattern. I think in the pattern it's maybe only that long. So here it is, and I lined the hood with some wool jersey that I had left over from a pair of pajamas that I made Eloise, and I think that's cozy. So the thing is, this pattern is not really intended to be outerwear, I don't think. The samples in the pattern are sewn up in just like jersey or terry, French terry. Fleece is a bit of a thicker fabric, so you can see the zipper, what's this called? Zipper panel kind of thing here that I have done in a coordinating jersey fabric because I first did it in the fleece and it was just so bulky and so, it was so ugly. I had to take it out. And this is, so that is something that I changed. But the construction of this was really well thought out, and yeah, it's just, I really like their patterns. They're really easy to follow. So if you're thinking about getting into sewing, I've had a couple of people ask me on Instagram and things how I got into sewing and how I learned how to do it. And I would definitely encourage you to check out some independent pattern designers such as Brindle and Twig for kids' clothes, or yeah, there's so many. But just to specifically look for independent designers because I think that more often than not, they have really detailed, clear, step-by-step instructions, whereas more commercial patterns or like patterns from Stop and Still, I have to say, have really bad instructions. So even though the independent patterns might be a bit more expensive than kind of the standard patterns, you often get a lot more value in those patterns, more instructions, step-by-step details, and potentially, I'm not promising, but potentially you could also have some pattern support from the designer. So yeah, this is just kind of the so when Eloise goes outside, which is usually every day, she usually has on a onesie and then some leggings, like cotton leggings, cotton onesie, sometimes wool, but she's grown out of the ones that I made before. And then she'll have, if it's really cold, she'll also have a wool sweater and then this fleece suit, thick wool socks that go up to her knees. And then she will have a little snood, which is just like, you know, it's just a neck and like a flap on the front and flap on the back. Just kind of like a scarf thing, but like, it's just not as complicated as a scarf. It's just pull over the head kind of thing. Her snood, and then she will, yeah, as I said, she'll have this fleece suit, and then she'll have her snowsuit over that with, you know, her thick gloves and wool hat, that kind of thing. So she stays nice and warm, and yeah, so that's a couple of the things that I've been making since the last time I spoke to you. As you can see, I have a lot of design projects in the works, and I have plans for some more. So if you're interested in a little bit more behind the scenes and just more content in general, I would love it if you would join me over on Patreon. You can choose your level of support over there, and of course it's not necessary by any means, but it's something that I've really been enjoying spending more time on and making content for my patrons. So yeah, you are welcome to join me over there, and if not, this content on YouTube will still be here. So it's just a little bit less regular, you might say. Anyway, I think that's all from me this time. I hope that you are well and that your families are well. We have some fluffy snow falling down at the moment, and Eloise is gonna go down for a nap soon. So until next time, happy knitting, happy sewing. Bye. What are you doing, Eloise? Huh? Are you playing with my measuring tape? Oh, that's so much fun, isn't it? So much fun.